Good afternoon. My name is James Renshaw, and I am going to be giving the end of semester reflection for pieces of the content of this class. Just kind of start off as an introduction. Again, I am a ag teacher in Ware County, Georgia, and I'm taking this class because I found it interesting. I found it would be one of my things that I love to study is money and finances. I take that into my personal life a good bit, and so I've enjoyed this class. And let's start off by reviewing some of the articles that I chose to review on. And so the three that I want to identify that I'm going to look at is going to be the depreciation patterns for agricultural machinery by Cross and Perry, the financial health of ag lenders by Brigman, and the last one is going to be on my money is not worth 6%. Those were the three that I found to be interesting and ones that I thought that I could talk a little bit about on. And so, starting out, between the two journal articles, Depreciation Patterns for Agricultural Machinery and the Financial Health of Ag Lenders, I found uh, some bridges between them as far as them kind of working off of each other. Because with the Financial Health of Ag Lenders, in doing some reading on that journal article, one of the things it mentions is that most of or that the United States ag system is capital intensive, meaning that there's a bunch of money tied up in land, equipment, and such as that. And so, talking about land, or more specifically, equipment, one of the biggest things that farmers deal with their equipment that they use from year to year is depreciation. And that's where we dive deep into that topic on the Cross and Perry Journal article. And so, in that article, it talks about the comparison of, I guess you could say, it's not really the comparison, but mentions straight line depreciation as well as the accelerated depreciation. And so, more specifically to this journal article, it talks about the remaining value to determine depreciation, which in my mindset, kind of compare that to the accelerated depreciation. And so Cross and Perry determined that in the remaining value in their study and how they calculate depreciation was that the factors involved there was the age of the machinery, the use, as far as whether it was heavy use or light use of that equipment, the maintenance kept up on that equipment, as well as the condition of that equipment to determine the amount of depreciation. And so, with age, the older the equipment, the more depreciation that you have, the less worth that it might have. Use, if it is a very lightly used piece of equipment, of course, that is going to help retain some of the value compared to if it's a heavy use. And it can kind of be compared to a vehicle bought and sold on Facebook Marketplace or at a dealership. A lot of times people look for a truck that was used by an older gentleman because more often than not, that vehicle is going to be maintained properly and it's not going to have a heavy use on it. It would be lightly used. And so that's what they're kind of deriving from there. Maintenance, like I said, if it's kept up and has been maintained, all the parts have been lubricated, and the engine has been serviced on a regular basis, and such as that, that is going to, again, help decrease the amount of depreciation on that piece of equipment. And then the overall condition, that kind of comes from the age and the use and the maintenance. And so, one thing that I was interested to see that is kind of common sense is that the same depreciation model can't be used for every single piece of equipment, and that's why there's different categories for tractors, balers, and harrowers due to wear, tear, and value. And so, based on all of that, based on those factors, based on the categories, it's kind of practical knowledge from agriculture that farmers can influence the calculation of depreciation. Older tractors do tend to break down more with worn down parts. And what I'm talking about there, and why I'm mentioning that, is farmers are going to take into account depreciation because if they have an older piece of equipment, that equipment is going to be more prone to break down on them over time. There's a higher risk of that. And what that translates to is downtime in the field, not being able to harvest or plant during the times that they need to. And so, in that situation, our farmer's going to compare the value of that tractor that they have and determine whether they need to salvage it, sell it, and buy another piece of equipment, newer one that's not going to break down more. And on the flip side of things, with older tractors, they're going to have heavy depreciation, which means that if there's enough discount on that vehicle when it is being sold, a farmer may buy it because of that discount, and let's just say, or it being worth the risk of it breaking down. And so that is part of what the depreciation patterns for agricultural machinery journal article was kind of talking about and going over. And so towards the end, I did make a note that on page 12 of that same article, that they mentioned that no equipment group comes close to showing a straight line depreciation rate. And so it would not be fair to always or to use a straight line depreciation rate when you're calculating that. And then moving on to the Brigman Financial Health Bank Lenders, it talks about that, like I mentioned earlier, that the U.S. ag system is capital intensive. Well, with the lending world involved in agriculture, most of the time, because of the high cost of capital that you find in agriculture, there's got to be some financing somewhere. Especially if you are going to begin an occupation that you're a first generation farmer, and not having something passed down to you. And so it talks a bunch into that. And then also it mentions one thing that I found interesting was that lenders had moved from a collateral based lending to a cash flow based lending. And in reading that, I didn't see a specific answer as to why, but I can only imagine that seeing a farmer with a good cash flow means more security than if they just have enough collateral to secure a loan. And so I see that as being more of an information source for lenders in knowing that they have security in lending to a specific farmer. And then on page 8, it talks about the lending environment continues to change in unpredictable ways. And I can only imagine that they were saying that based off of what happened in the 1980s with the lending environment, as well as closer to the 2000s with all of the changes in the market and everything else. And then the last thing, I found this one just an interesting read that I enjoyed looking at. And I could also kind of relate to it, not being a farmer, but in my own personal finances. But the article of "My Money is Not Worth 6%." And I enjoyed reading that paper from the mindset that it gave, or the mindset that you took on while reading it. and how it looked at money and its value on today versus tomorrow. A dollar today is not worth a dollar tomorrow, and so or is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. And so some of the takeaways that I took from the article is that the biggest way to increase a return on an investment is simply by paying off the debt. And I know that's simply put, but it's kind of harder said than done, depending on what your situation is. And so, from that whole mindset of that paper, I kind of thought that it sounded a bunch like what something Dave Ramsey would say. Dave Ramsey preaches on get out of debt, stay out of debt, be financially free. And so that's what it kind of sounded like. Though Dave Ramsey, I know, can be a little on the more uh, radical side. And so, with the another thing that I mentioned here in my notes is that the accrual method of accounting method also helps make you aware of the interest you are paying. And I know that farmers, as well as people who are just working on their own personal finances, tend to not realize what interest they are actually paying, or how much they're paying out. And I think if we step back and kind of took on that accrual accounting method, it would change our mindset more on our on how we take in debt and how we view it. And so all of that was just an interesting perspective to take on and read, and something that I think that everybody needs to pay attention to, especially if you are a farmer with a high debt to asset ratio. And so I found all this interesting, and I'm glad to be able to have this reflection of these articles. And so there we have it. I hope you have a good rest of your semester, and I'm signing off.